Good morning. Catching you up on election results. In a special election, Republican Mayra Flores wins South Texas House seat in a district that has voted Democrat for 100 years. South Carolina sees Trump-endorsed Russell Fry defeat Tom Rice with over 50% of the vote, and more early results from primaries in 4 states.
Bookings on U.S. airlines are down compared with last month. Airfares are among many factors contributing to the highest inflation rate that Americans have seen in decades.
The Federal Reserve expected to announce a rate hike today. We spoke to an expert about what it means for the economy and where we're headed.
A performing arts group touches the hearts of people around the globe with its mission to revive genuine traditional culture, and one artist's story of the persecution he's faced for his belief. Good morning. Welcome to NTD Daybreak. I'm Kevin Hogan.
Good morning, and I'm Evelyn Lee. It's great to have you with us this morning. It's Wednesday, June 15th. And let's talk election results. In Texas, Republicans picked up a House seat by winning a special election. Mayra Flores secured over 50% of the vote to beat the top contender, Democrat Dan Sanchez, avoiding a runoff. Flores will fill the spot that has been vacant in Texas's 34th district since Filemon Vela resigned in March. She will finish the current term ending in January 2023 and face Vicente Gonzalez in November's general election for the 34th district's full term. Gonzalez currently serves as the House representative for District 15, but a recent redistricting put his home into the 34th district. Flores will face a much tougher challenge against him, as the new district lines are in an area where voters have commonly voted Democrat over the last 100 years. Flores is a legal immigrant from Mexico married to a Border Patrol officer and the first Mexican-born woman to serve in Congress. She campaigned as a pro-life and pro-Second Amendment candidate. As for Tuesday's primary elections, voters from 4 states, Nevada, North Dakota, South Carolina, and Maine, have picked their party nominees. 3 Trump-endorsed candidates won and 1 lost. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg takes us through the projected winners.
In Nevada, Trump-endorsed Adam Laxalt won the Republican primary for U.S. Senate, defeating Sam Brown and 6 other contenders. He will run against Senator Catherine Cortez Masto, who is considered one of the most vulnerable Democrats in the 2020 midterms. Incumbent Senator John Hoeven won the Republican primary in North Dakota against challenger Riley Kuntz. Hoeven was backed by Trump and the North Dakota Republican Party. Katrina Christensen won the Democratic Senate primary in North Dakota. And the state's House at-large primary has Mark Haugen for Democrats against incumbent Kelly Armstrong for Republicans in the general election. In South Carolina, incumbent Representative Nancy Mace defeated Trump-endorsed challenger Katie Arrington in the 1st Congressional District Republican primary. And in the 7th District, Trump-endorsed Russell Fry defeated incumbent Representative Tom Rice and 5 others. Fry joked on his Facebook and campaign page he was going to fry the rice. He secured over 50% of the vote, avoiding a runoff. Rice voted to impeach Trump after the events at the Capitol on January 6th. Maine's 2nd Congressional District has Bruce Poliquin as the winner of the Republican primary. Poliquin will face Democrat incumbent Representative Jared Golden, who ran unopposed, in November. With Democratic President Joe Biden slumping in recent polls and soaring inflation and high gas prices on voters' minds, Republicans are expected to win control of the House of Representatives and possibly the Senate. That would bring Biden's legislative agenda to a halt and give Republicans the power to launch investigations against him. A Reuters Ipsos opinion poll completed Tuesday shows Biden's public approval rating at 39%, in its 3rd straight weekly decline, approaching the lowest level of his presidency. According to the poll, 56% of Americans disapprove of Biden's performance. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
On Capitol Hill yesterday, lawmakers sent a bipartisan bill to the president's desk. It's to grant more security to Supreme Court justices' family members. This as protests continue outside their homes and emotions run high just ahead of the court's official ruling on Roe v. Wade. NTD's Melina Weiskup has the story.
The House today broke a month-long delay and passed a bill to ramp up security for Supreme Court justices and their family members, giving the Supreme Court the same level of security that's given to Congress and the White House. Now it's off to the White House for the president's signature.
By passing this bill as is, we are sending a clear message to the left-wing radicals. You cannot intimidate the Supreme Court justices.
Most of the Congress members, both Democrat and Republican, voted yes, but there were 27 Democrats who voted no.
It's a talking point. It's not because it really does anything, it's simply a talking point.
A talking point? The left is telling people where Justice Barrett's kids go to school. That is not a talking point, that is a fact.
This move in Congress comes as the Supreme Court is set to release its final ruling on an abortion case this summer. And just days after an armed man was arrested near the home of Justice Brett Kavanaugh and charged with attempted murder. Pro-abortion activists have continued to protest around D.C., and the Epoch Times reports that activists have said they aren't ruling out violence. One longtime activist saying, quote, "If you want to do property destruction, do it in secret. If you're doing it publicly, you're probably an infiltrator." When asked about protesters' comments and the potential for violent activists, the Democrat caucus chairman told NTD's Iris Tao that they condemn violence.
Whether it comes from whatever particular ideological perspective.
And just last night, protests continued in front of Justice Alito's home. The Supreme Court is expected to release a slate of opinions tomorrow, but there's no details on which specific cases they'll be ruling on. So we'll have to wait and see tomorrow if the Supreme Court decides to publicly announce its official ruling for this historic abortion case. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
Former Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms is joining the White House as a senior advisor to President Biden. According to the Washington Post, Bottoms will serve as the director of the White House Office of Public Engagement. She replaces Cedric Richmond, who recently left to become a Democratic National Committee senior advisor at Biden's request. Bottoms told Axios her role will be to coordinate two-way dialogue between the White House and communities around the country. As a rising Democratic Party star, Bottoms had been on the short list to be considered for President Biden's running mate in 2020.
More than 10,000 visitors were ordered out of Yellowstone as unprecedented flooding tore through the northern half of the nation's oldest national park. The Yellowstone River hit historic levels after days of rain and rapid snowmelt, wreaking havoc across parts of southern Montana and northern Wyoming. Many power lines were knocked out. Remarkably, no one was reported injured or killed. The only visitors left in the massive park were a dozen campers still making their way out of the backcountry. Yellowstone National Park celebrates its 150th anniversary this year. The flooding hit the park just as a summer tourist season was about to start. Tourists found themselves witnessing nature at its most unpredictable as the Yellowstone River washed away everything in its path. The park could remain closed for as long as a week, and northern entrances may not reopen this summer.
Incredibly scary. The waters were just starting to recede on Tuesday.
And the full extent of the destruction might not be known for a while. Luckily, it's not expected to have affected wildlife.
The closure of the northern part of the park means visitors won't be able to see features like Tower Fall, Mammoth Hot Springs, and the Lamar Valley, which is known for viewing wildlife like bears and wolves.
Wildlife? I saw a grizzly bear in that part of the country. They're majestic animals.
Man, maybe I'll try my luck when it reopens.
Maybe. And while the northern part is closed, the iconic Old Faithful and Yellowstone Lake on the park's southern loop road will likely be reopened. And coming up, the Federal Reserve is expected to announce a rate hike today. We spoke to an expert about what it means for the economy and where we're headed. And bookings on U.S. airlines are down compared with last month. Airfares are among many factors contributing to the highest inflation rate that Americans have seen in decades. We'll have more for you after this short break.
Everyone is talking about inflation. The Fed is considering a rate hike that we haven't seen since the 90s. The Consumer Price Index in May is up 8.6% from a year ago at a 40-year high. But what does all this mean? Joining me to make sense of this is Van Skyn. He is a chief economist at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. Great to have you, Vance.
Thank you for having me on the show.
We keep hearing keywords like stagflation and recession. What is it that the U.S. economy is facing?
Well, right now we've got a period of stagnating economic growth and at the same time, high levels of inflation. You put those two together and that's a period of stagflation. And I think it's one of the reasons why we see so many families struggling across the United States. I mean, when you look at the Consumer Sentiment Index, it's at the lowest level that we've seen on record. And at the same time, we see a period whenever President Joe Biden has record low approval ratings. And so we see both of these kind of going together. People are concerned about their future. They can't put food on the table, and everything just continues to go up all around them, and their wages aren't going up at the same rate. So what I really think we need to see is some slowdown in inflation so people can start to feel better about their economic health.
And how likely is that 75 basis point rate hike?
Well, I think it's more and more likely that the Federal Reserve will see that the inflation rate is growing too fast. What the Federal Reserve would do here is to raise interest rates, the overnight lending rate between banks, that's their target federal funds rate, by 75 basis points. And so what that means is they'll be selling bonds to the public. That pulls money, pulls dollars out of the private sector, and then that reduces the amount of demand for goods and services across the economy, which can bring down prices. Because right now what we see is we have too much money, meaning too much demand, chasing too few goods. Demand is growing faster than supply, and that's driving up prices all around us. And so what they want to do is pull money out of the economy, because ultimately inflation is always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon.
And any hope for a soft-ish landing still?
Well, I think it's going to be very difficult for them to be able to, walk along this tightrope to make it to where this is a soft landing. We've been, kind of propped up as an economy, an inflated economy for about 2 years now. When you had COVID, you had the shutdowns, and then you had a massive amount of government spending. The increase in national debt by $6 trillion to $30 trillion, a massive amount of money that's been put into the economy as the Fed then purchased those bonds and put more money into the economy.
What exactly does that mean now for the consumer? So either we spend less and risk a recession, or we keep buying and risk continue to fuel inflation. Is that what's happening?
That's a big part of it. I mean, right now you have a period where there's a lot of money that's been put into the economy by the Federal Reserve and Congress overspending. And so when people go out and spend more, that puts up pricing pressure on goods and services across the economy. But at the same time, if the people aren't producing, if we're not going to see more economic growth and economic activity, productivity, the output per worker was the lowest since 1947. We saw a decline in the first quarter of this year. That means that people aren't producing as much in the output per worker. So businesses are going to have to either cut back on how much they're paying workers, whether or not they're going to hire more workers. And just in the small business community this past month, there were 91,000 jobs were lost. Nearly 100,000 jobs were lost. So that means that many of these people are going to be facing some hardships of not having a job, not being able to put food on the table. And so if something's got to give, and ultimately I think that will be the state of the economy, where we see lower and lower economic growth, and then that will help to put lower pressure on prices as we move forward. It's an unfortunate circumstance, but at some point when you've inflated a boom, it's ultimately got to bust. And that's part of the problem with the Biden administration's policies and the Federal Reserve's policies is it's overfueled the economy.
And I know the Biden administration in the past has blamed a lot of it on Putin, and I just want to know your take on it. Like, how much can this be blamed on Putin, and how much could have been avoided?
Well, we have this thing that's called the Putin price hike, but really this is more like the Biden price hike, because what you've seen is that Biden came in and started regulating the oil and gas sector, in particular restricting how much could be produced of oil, regulating a lot of the investments with their ESG, environmental, social governance issues, putting more politics into the policy that had really slowed down and put a bottleneck on how much oil can be produced across here in the United States. And then President Biden's going over to Saudi Arabia and Venezuela and asking them to produce more oil for us to import when we have so much oil here.
Okay, and so to wrap this up, do you have any little bit more good news, some glimmer of hope?
Well, what I think that we can see is that as the Fed starts to raise interest rates, I do believe we'll start to see some normalcy in the economy. And it may take a little while. I think normally what you see is things will get worse before they get better, but there will be a better day. We will hopefully learn from these lessons, because these have been some serious lessons we've learned in the last couple of years. And once we've learned from those lessons and move forward, we will be able to have a brighter day where we can have more jobs, more economic growth, and the ability to put more food on the table and buy gas again, hopefully at a lower price. That would be a key part here.
Thank you so much for your insights and for the positive outlook. Van Skyn, Texas Policy Foundation, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Airline fares have jumped nearly 50% since January and remain higher than they were before the pandemic. The high prices are leading to a possible slowdown in the number of seats airlines can sell. NTD's Condemn tells us more.
Bookings for flights within the United States fell by nearly 2.5% in May, compared with April. This according to research firm Adobe Digital Insights. The value of those sales rose 6%, however, to over $8 billion because of price increases. Prices for U.S. flights in May were 30% higher than the same month in 2019. May prices were up 6% over April. Numbers are based on transactions at 6 of the 10 largest U.S. airlines.
Ticket prices have gone up about, according to Adobe, 47% since January, and we may be getting near the tipping point for some folks that this is as much as they can afford.
Airfares are among many factors contributing to the highest inflation rate that Americans have seen in 40 years. Airline officials say demand for travel is strong after 2 years of the pandemic.
There was a bit of a recovery last year, but it really took off this spring, and we are back to about 90% of the number of people who were flying before the pandemic.
As for the prices, they say they need to raise fares to cover surging jet fuel prices, the largest expense behind labor. International travel could get a boost from the ending requirement to show a negative COVID-19 test before flying to the US. United Airlines said Monday that searches for international trips increased 7% in 3 days after the administration announced it would drop the testing requirement. Condemn, NTD News.
Remember El Salvador's big investment in Bitcoin? With the crypto crash, the country just lost at least $50 million in Bitcoin over the past 10 months. That basically wipes off over half of the country's total investment in the cryptocurrency. El Salvador's president, Nayib Bukele, has amassed over 2,300 Bitcoins that were worth over $100 million since the country adopted it as a legal tender alongside the US dollar in September 2021. Now on Monday, Bitcoin fell to its lowest level since the end of 2020, but Bukele says he isn't worried. He says the fiscal risk is extremely minimal. And then there's delivery companies that have tried all sorts of ways to deliver packages. From traditional vans to drones, now UPS unveiled a battery-powered four-wheeled cycle to more efficiently haul cargo in some of the country's most congested streets. The slimmed-down vehicles, called e-quads by UPS, look familiar enough with the company's gold-colored logo and accompanying stripe on a dark brown background. The company now has a fleet of more than 1,000 electric vehicles and thousands more that aren't powered by traditional gas engines.
So the city is ever growing, and as you can see, there's many bike lanes that we've seen all throughout the city. And so why not have an e-quad and test that out and see if we can also have success there.
I think they're really efficient and a great way to get packages around the city.
Have you ever seen one?
I've never seen one. That's why I walked over here, was to come look at it.
UPS started in Seattle more than a century ago, and the first deliveries were made on foot or by bicycle. The company said a trial run of the battery-powered cycles is focused on New York City and in several cities in Europe. And coming up, a performing arts group on a mission to revive traditional Chinese culture, and the story of an artist facing persecution for his beliefs. That and more after the break. Each year, several groups of artists based in New York travel around the world with a mission to revive the essence of Chinese culture through performing arts. Shen Yun Performing Arts has received praise from around the world, with many calling it a rejuvenating experience.
It is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Awesome.
Last weekend, Shen Yun performed in 5 different cities around the world.
It's like a painting. It's like you're watching a visual painting and dance. It was really beautiful. I can't express how much I enjoyed it.
Invigorating. It's very enlightening and invigorating.
The show was an absolutely perfect blend of color, music, and dance. It's like a dream, permeating the skin with authenticity. As I'm telling you this, I'm starting to feel it again.
For many, Shen Yun is not only a dance performance, it is an experience for the body, mind, and spirit.
Just very relaxed, right? I mean, I felt like my blood pressure went down. After tonight, I'm convinced, that it has healing powers, right?
For me, today is a spiritual experience. I had to remind myself to breathe. Because of the excitement, I almost forgot to breathe.
It's the messaging in an art form that will just lift you up and take you away.
Shen Yun's mission is to revive genuine traditional Chinese culture before communism.
I think it's a great mission because my personal hope was always to see China have a cultural revival of their past culture, and I hope they do.
I think the CCP is one of the worst things on earth right now, and I really appreciate Chinese culture before they came along and have done the amount of damage that they've done. I mean, it's a very huge concern of mine, and I follow it pretty closely. So I really appreciate. That's why we came to this. I really appreciate that you're showing the world what Chinese culture was like before what we have right now.
Well, we support everything that it stands for. We support China before communism and would love to see it come back to its full glory.
The persecution and genocide of the Falun Gong, Falun Dafa, and the Uyghurs must end. And I'm so glad that this performance is here to spread the word, because it's so important to so many millions of people here as well as China.
Ancient Chinese civilization placed great emphasis on the divine. Shen Yun aims to keep this tradition alive today, portraying values such as faith, benevolence, and respect for the heavens.
Well, I think that the stories are so important because of the messages that they give. And it's really wonderful to feel the heartfelt kind of message of compassion and also trying to do the right thing in daily life and watching the heroes struggle, with evil and with forces of darkness and be triumphant. It's very inspiring.
The line where it says, you can't, I'm paraphrasing, but you can't take your personal belongings, your material things with you to the other side. It really makes you stop and think about what's important in life. And I think that's the message I'm taking away tonight.
NTD News, New York.
And get this, that's an interesting fact about the company. They have 7 groups that tour around the world, but they can't perform in China.
That's right. Our reporter Jackie Rios had the privilege of speaking with one of the artists, which might help us understand why this is the case. Let's take a look.
The
first year that I came to the United States, I watched Shen Yun in San Francisco. The moment the curtains went up, I thought, I want to be one of those performers.
我想要去成为他们当中的一员。其实，在神韵对我来讲就是一种责任吧。
Actually, to me, being part of Shen Yun is a duty to revive traditional Chinese culture in the U.S. I feel that is an honor. It's a sacred job to me.
很殊胜的感觉。
In those pieces, do you get to perform, and what role do you play?
警察局局长。
I play the role of a police chief. I was born in China and have seen many police officers there. And because I've lived through it, you could say I have a bit more experience.
所谓的有经验吧。
How was your life growing up in China?
我父母他们是1995年5月份开始修炼。
My parents started practicing Falun Dafa in 1995. Because of that, my father quit smoking and drinking. His temper also became better, which made my family more harmonious. When the persecution began, my father was sent illegally to a labor camp for 3 years, and his remodeling business was forced to shut down. I was only 1 year old then. In April 2004, after sending me to nursery school, my father was illegally arrested again by 4 police officers and was sentenced to serve another 3 years in a labor camp. The police were also looking to persecute my mother, so she went on the run after she heard the news of my father's arrest. At the time, losing essentially both of my parents made me really depressed, so my uncle took me in. On January 17, 2005, the police arrested my mother and put her in a brainwashing camp. She went on a hunger strike for as long as 7 months. She only took in liquids until her body couldn't bear it anymore, and then she was sent home in an emaciated state. That same year in August, my father was released as well. In 2013, my mother and I were able to leave China, come to the US, and begin a normal life. However, my father, who had been living under immense pressure for decades, passed away on September 4th, 2017.
What was different for you compared to China? What was the difference?
There is a lot of freedom in the U.S. You can do the exercises freely outside, practice Falun Dafa without the police arresting or harassing you. You have no such environment in China. I remember I used to feel worried if my parents didn't come home by 8 or 9 o'clock. I would wonder if they were arrested again.
When you got involved and you started doing these trainings, did you ever consider in thinking, can I really do this?
In the beginning, it was pretty difficult because flexibility is a challenging aspect for me. I need to stretch all the time and endure a great amount of pain, day by day and year by year. In Shen Yun, everyone works extremely hard. They wake up very early and go to bed very late. Everyone puts a lot of effort in studying dance, and we always help each other. If anyone has trouble with techniques or other issues, we all lend a hand. In Shen Yun, everyone puts others before themselves. Actually, Shen Yun has become a part of my life. Every day is filled with performances, dance rehearsals, and classes.
If you could go back to China and Shen Yun could perform there, how would that make you feel?
I would think that we are halfway to accomplishing our mission because then people can finally see traditional Chinese culture in China.
I hear a lot of strength, a lot of courage, and that really, it touches me. What a touching story. And I think it's great that the company is enjoying the freedom, that he is enjoying the freedom now in the West as well. And this season, they have been performing more than 400 shows in the U.S. and about 300 shows across the world.
And on that note, the Shen Yun Performing Arts 2022 World Tour is almost coming to an end. Catch your last chance this year in Washington, D.C. in July.
And now we are going to take a look at the second supermoon of the year. When the moon's orbit is closest to Earth, it appears larger and brighter than a regular full moon. June's full moon was called the strawberry moon in relation to the ripening of strawberries in June. The video shows the supermoon casting its light on the Temple of Poseidon on the coast south of Athens. The ancient temple, located on a cliff overlooking the sea, is a popular site for moon watchers who came out to see the first supermoon in May.
Well, you know, I saw the moon on my way to work this morning, and man, it was bright.
You know what? I missed it, and I was even thinking about it yesterday. Well, but apparently there's 2 more this summer, so let's see.
Yeah, that'll be a good time to bust out the binoculars and go spot some moon craters.
Good point. Maybe I'll do that. And that's all for today's program. Thanks for watching. I'm Evelyn Lee.
And I'm Kevin Hogan.